Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. Today we're going to talk about the pass rushers for the 2021 NFL Draft, specifically Kwity Paye, because I've heard his name pop up here and there, and people are interested to see maybe if Kwity Paye could be a solid option for the Giants with the 11th overall pick. Considering the fact that he is a pass rusher, the Giants need more pass rushers. They need help in the category, especially after losing Oshane Ximines and Lorenzo Carter this past season. Carter tore his Achilles, and Ximines suffered a shoulder injury, both season ending. So that was pretty bad for the Giants. They really had to supplement the outside linebacker position with guys like Carter Coughlin, Jabal Shared. Really didn't get the maximum value from those guys and really didn't have the pass rush we would have wanted. We really relied on that interior defensive line, with Leonard Williams, Dalvin Thompson, and Dexter Lawrence. This is a guy that, might fit the Giants system. He might be able to produce that pass rush that we lack so badly. And, it's always good to go with the best overall pass rusher in the draft, especially if he falls to you, and the Giants, at 11 could be that team. Before we dive into Kwity Paye, kind of what he has to offer, if he's a scheme fit for the Giants, Anthony, my friend, how are you doing today?
I'm doing quite well. I think that, maybe a slight apology is in order for our last video and the editing mistake that Alex made, and you guys all had to hear us react to...
I don't apologize.
You had to hear us all react to his cat laying out one big stinky nuke in the litter box. That was pretty funny, though. Yeah, maybe we shouldn't apologize, because you guys seemed to really enjoy it. It was funny.
The cat nuked me. I mean, it's my fault for closing the door, and he came in here. I opened the door slightly, and he walked in here, and he just nuked me in my little office, and, the stench travels quickly in the little office. So, aside from the ambulances driving by and having to mute myself all the time, my kitty also wanted to take a duke in my office, and I've called him Dave Gettleman, and he's living up to the name, I must say. I've been calling him Dave Gettleman for a while now, to Anthony and anyone else that asks, and he just continues to ruin my day. I just hate Dave Gettleman, not because of the actual Dave Gettleman. Before this, my cat just nukes me every time I'm in here. Terrible. But over that, we're talking Kwity Paye, and I'm really excited to talk about a player that, the Giants could be looking at as a potential solution for the pass rush position. But Anthony, I want to let you, finish what you had to say.
Yeah, I was just saying, I thought it was funny. I'm happy that everybody else took it in good spirits. I thought it was a funny little editing mistake. But anyway, moving on to Kwity Paye. This is a guy who's really interesting. He's a very interesting prospect, very electric, has all the tools. I don't think he's a scheme fit for the Giants, and I don't think that they should draft him. I'm going to start it out and just say that right now. I don't think that he should be on the Giants' radar. He's not a scheme fit. The Giants are primarily a 3-4. I know they're multiple, okay? You don't have to tell me that. I know that the Giants run a multiple defense. I'm very much aware of that. But primarily, they stick in their 3-4, and they run a lot of nickel and all of this and that. So, yeah, maybe you could figure out a way to put him into the scheme and find the place for him. But primarily, the Giants, where their pass rush is supposed to come from in a primarily 3-4 defense, is from a stand-up edge rusher. Now, Kwity Paye is an edge rusher, but he is more of a defensive end kind of edge rusher, a 4-3 edge rusher, not a 3-4 edge rusher. He's a guy who's going to be ideal when his hand is in the dirt, when he's on the ground and he's ready to jump out of his stance that way. He's not really the guy who's going to stand there and roam around the edge and then burst and bend around the edge. He's very much a defensive end pass rusher, and that's where I see, a complication with the Giants potentially drafting him. I don't think that the Giants really need a guy who puts his hand in the dirt and rushes off the edge. We've got 3 guys who put their hands in the dirt from the interior and push the pocket and make plays that way. Now we just need, in terms of the pass rush at least, we need a guy who stands up off the edge and makes plays in the pass rushing department that way. That's personally what I see from the Giants scheme. Alex, you may agree, you may disagree, but personally, and this is all personal, as I've said it like 100 times now, I like Kwity Paye a lot as a prospect, but not for the New York Giants. I just don't think that he's a scheme fit. I think that the Giants really do have a very complex scheme, so yes, I'm sure there's a way they could fit him in there, but I don't think that he necessarily is a proper scheme fit for the Giants and what they like to do on defense.
And I would agree with that statement just because we know the Giants love to play that 3-4, 3 interior defensive linemen, 2 outside linebackers, and they expect to get Oshane Ximines and Lorenzo Carter back next season, and they expect those 2 guys to be, at least productive or rotational in a sense. I would be surprised if they didn't allocate a top 3 or third round, like somewhere in the first, second, third round, if they didn't allocate one of those picks toward a pass rusher. I'd be surprised because they do need more talent there, and they need someone with upside, an athletic guy People talk about Gregory Russo, another guy we broke down a couple weeks ago. And he's another guy that you could say really isn't a scheme fit. He played safety and wide receiver back in high school, so he has that ability as an outside linebacker if they did make the transition with him. He has the ability to drop back into coverage, which is what Patrick Graham does like to do. But I don't know.
I'll
what do you think about Gregory Russo?
I think that you make a good point there with Gregory Russo, right? Where, he's kind of versatile in a way where you can move him around. I see the same thing with Kwity Paye. Like his physical traits and athletic ability are kind of insane. He ran a 6.5 second 3-cone, which is like getting every draft scout just like in a tizzy. They're just amazed by that number, 6.5 seconds. That was super, super impressive. So you could look at something like that and say, okay, this guy can stand up off the edge. He can roam around as a stand-up edge rusher. You know what I mean? You can definitely look at him and say we can transition him to that role. But in terms of the Giants needing an impact edge rusher right away, and in terms of not necessarily wanting to build a project defensive end into an outside linebacker role, in terms of that, it just to me scares me away from Kwity Paye for the Giants. If you're talking about a team that runs a 4-3, I think Kwity Paye is awesome. He really has the physical traits, all that stuff you just can't teach. The athleticism, he has all of that. He's very unrefined, he needs coaching. He needs to figure out the technique and get better with his hands and add more pass rush moves and all of that stuff. But he's very powerful. He's very athletic. Everything in between, perfect body type, just a perfect body type for a 4-3 defensive end in my eyes, and that's really just where you go from there. And then with Gregory Russo, he's a guy that I actually think is going to succeed more from the interior in the NFL. When I watched Gregory Russo, I watched him before the 2020 NFL season even started. I started watching Gregory Russo because I knew the Giants were going to need a pass rusher following this year, even before the season started. I knew that would be a target for them. But I knew that Gregory Russo was going to be the biggest name out of college in the following year. So I decided to watch him. I got way ahead of the curve and I started watching him. And I really just saw a guy who I think is going to be dominant on the interior and struggle standing up off the edge. Now, 5-tech, again, Kwity Paye, Gregory Russo as the 5-tech defensive end edge rusher in a 4-3. I think both of them are scheme fits there. I just don't know if they can actually make this transition to be a stand-up edge rusher like the Giants need in their 3-4 defense. That's where I see problem with the top of this edge rusher class. They're very talented players. They're going to find success somewhere. I truly believe that. I just don't think that they're going to find success in the Giants' defensive scheme in 2021.
Yeah, I don't think that the Giants should go after either of them. For those reasons, in addition, I think Gregory Russo could make the transition. He has a very similar body frame to Lorenzo Carter when I think about him, but he has that ability. That's the versatility you get with a guy like Russo. Patrick Graham could do a lot of great things and coach him up pretty well, in my opinion. More so than Kwity Paye, simply because like I mentioned, he was a former safety wide receiver in high school. He has that natural ability to drop back in coverage and really fill up zones. And the Giants play a ton of zone coverage, so that's something that you could look at and say, we have a really strong interior defense. If we get a really good outside linebacker, like Gregory Russo, for example, that can drop into coverage, we saw Carter Coughlin do it all the time. When he was playing OLB, he did drop back into coverage. He did cover zones, and he did get beat a couple times from tight ends. There was one specifically I have in mind against the Cleveland Browns when Austin Hooper completely turned him around. And Gregory Russo, with the instincts and having played that safety position before, understanding the secondary and understanding zones, probably wouldn't get beat that bad. So those are just some thoughts I have in terms of Gregory Russo and why I think he would actually be a better fit for the Giants than Kwity Paye. But like Anthony said, Paye is a 4-3 defensive end, hand in the dirt. He has really strong hands. He's super, super athletic, and he's a really strong overall presence off the edge. But that's the problem, is that the Giants don't need a 4-3 defensive end with his hand in the dirt. They need someone that's going to stand up. They need an outside linebacker like I'm using Carter Coughlin because that's who they used the most this past year when the injuries occurred. We saw Carter Coughlin move to the 0-tech. We did a whole breakdown where he was lined up over the nose tackle. We saw him line up in 3-tech and 5-tech outside linebacker. He was moving all around the place. So with that being said, you need a guy who has just a fantastic athleticism, because Patrick Graham is going to use those guys in many different ways. And Kwity Paye is more of a fundamental 4-3 defensive end. I don't see him as a multiple kind of guy. I see him as he's a one-gap, single-gap type of defensive end. He's going to cover those lanes up. And I don't think he's going to contain the edge like an outside linebacker is supposed to do in terms of when you have rushing quarterbacks. You need somebody to mirror those rushing quarterbacks and mobile guys and really be able to hold it down and just be able to kind of mirror them from an edge perspective. But also if you're running stunts, because we saw with Carter Coughlin against Seattle, he was playing over zero tech a lot, and what we saw him do, he would shade over to the B gap on either side and just wait for Russell Wilson to make a move. And the second he made a move, he would shoot that gap or he'd shoot outside. He was pretty much just reading the gaps, just keeping his eyes up. Kwity Paye is not that type of guy. He's going to use his hands. He's going to bull rush you. He's going to get into the backfield. He's not a superior speed guy that it's going to with more agile. He's a power defensive end. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I think that he's very athletic. I actually kind of disagree. I think he's very agile and very nimble, and I think that does give him versatility and the ability to move around. But I just still, again, in terms of his technique that he's been taught through college and in terms of the technique foundation that he has laid out for him and what we see from him, he is a defensive lineman, right? Like a defensive end and not a linebacker. But in terms of being a defensive end, being a defensive lineman, he's freaky. He's quick, he's athletic, he's strong, he's powerful. All those things, he really probably will kill it for whichever team drafts him and puts him at that 5 tech, that 4-3 defensive end role. Kwity Paye really has like all the traits. He's probably going to be a really good player. Another thing that I'll say though is I remember, what's his name? Rashawn Gary. He went to the Green Bay Packers. Now when he was coming out of college, he was again another guy that was mocked to the Giants in a lot of mock drafts. I think this was the 2019 or 2019 NFL draft.
I think it was
same
2019,
year. 2019, same year as Daniel Jones. He was another guy that was mocked to the Giants on numerous occasions. And another guy that I said, no, I don't think that he's a good fit for the Giants because he is a 4-3 defensive end. Now, again, another similarity is Rashawn Gary wasn't the most productive player in college. He didn't put up a big stats. Well, neither has Kwity Paye. Kwity Paye had 2 sacks in 4 games this year. He had 6.5 in 12 games last year. In terms of collegiate production statistics, it's really hard to go by those because you look at the sack numbers and you actually look further, look into the analytics, look at the pressure numbers. Those are usually a lot more telling, right? Especially in college. But he's a guy that I just think Giants fans, I know them. I know last year when Leonard Williams was playing pretty good football, just racking up constant pressures, but not getting sacks. Everyone was ready to get rid of Leonard Williams. Myself included, I saw that argument to some extent. There was really more to it with the Leonard Williams thing, and I get that, so maybe it's not a fair one-to-one comparison. But in terms of Giants fans looking at stats, because I know that a lot of Giants fans really love to look at stats, I think that they will look at Kwity Paye's stats and be like, wow, this guy's a first-round talent, and I think that he'll even get to the NFL and he'll be very productive off the edge for somebody. And I don't think the Giants fans will look at it and be like, wow, this guy is great. They're going to look at it like, well, he only had 4 sacks in 16 games. That's not good. But meanwhile, he has like 60-something pressures, right? Like that's what I could see from Kwity Paye. That's what he's been laid out as. That's what we've seen from him in college, and that's probably what he'll transition to be for the first few years in the NFL. Now, Rashawn Gary, again, is a guy that I wasn't too crazy about. I didn't think he was a scheme fit. He's really started to get a lot better over this past season. His rookie season was not very good. Sophomore season, towards the end, he really started to pick it up for the Packers. He was starting to look a lot better, and I think that you will see something similar to Kwity Paye. A very raw, unrefined prospect who just needs proper NFL coaching and some time. I don't know if the Giants have the time to, hone in a prospect's talents in that way. I think in terms of their edge rusher help, they need instant help because they have a ton of young guys who can contribute. Lorenzo, Oshane, Ximines. These guys aren't dominant edge rushers, but they're good contributors. I don't think we need another good contributor, right? Right away, we need somebody who actually makes an impact, and I don't know if Kwity Paye or Gregory Russo would be that for the Giants in their rookie seasons.
Yeah, and Rashawn Gary, I don't know if you mentioned it, but he did make the transition to outside linebacker. He is playing that position for Green Bay, which is super interesting because, like you mentioned, we didn't think he was going to be a scheme fit for the Giants. And he actually ended up making the transition to OLB. He picked up 5 sacks this year, 35 combined tackles, 11 quarterback hits. He took a massive step forward, and he only started 4 games. So they're using him, kind of developing him into that role. But like you also said, which is a very good point.
It's a slow build.
Exactly.
They got to hone his talents in.
The Giants don't have that luxury because they don't have Aaron Rodgers. When you have Aaron Rodgers, it masks a lot of problems. Which goes back to an argument like maybe you trade for Deshaun Watson because he massively allows you to develop guys because he puts points on the board. So these all kind of correlate to different arguments. But Rashawn Gary specifically, he made that transition. They wanted to develop him slowly and to fit his scheme. Kwity Paye could do the same thing. A lot of people keep bringing his name up, even though the production doesn't like wow you off the page. I mean, 2019 he had 12.5 tackles for a loss, 6.5 sacks. And this past season, he only played in 4 games. He had 2 sacks and 4 tackles for a loss. Nothing crazy. So, the sample size is small. The production is, it's there in 2019, but aside from that, it's not going to wow you. But that kind of feels like the same thing with all Michigan defenders. They all kind of have like mediocre statistics, but then they translate well to the NFL. So we'll see how that works when it comes to Kwity Paye, but I do believe he is not a scheme fit for the Giants. I would not be looking at him as a potential option at the 11th pick. I'm still in the wide receiver boat, personally. I'm still in the Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith, or even Kyle Pitts. I'm still on those guys. Unless there's only way I'm considering Russo or Kwity Paye is if we're trading back and we're acquiring another second-round pick, and then in that case, maybe you can move up and get a guy like Kadarius Toney. There's Nico Collins,
Terrace
in the second round last Rondale Moore, Terrace Marshall,
Rashad Bateman,
a bunch.
One of those later first-round wide receivers. Yeah, I see.
Exactly. That. So there's a lot of value. And here's what I will say about the wide receiver class. It is so deep this year. Like, this might be the deepest wide receiver class I've ever seen, ever. Obviously, we don't know how they will pan out in the NFL, but that's a different story. The fact is, like, there are a lot of really, really great talents, like Justin Jefferson style players and quality players that you could land in the second round this year. So it might even convince the Giants, let's pass on one right now. We'll sign a guy in free agency. We'll get a high upside guy in the second round, and let's go to defense in the first round. Give Patrick Graham that extra piece that will make this defense a top 10 unit. Maybe that's what they're looking at, because we know the Giants, especially Joe Judge and Dave Gettleman, they focus. They love defense. They want to punch you in the nose. They want physicality. They want guys rallying to the ball. They want the defense to set the tone of the football game. And it's weird, though, because as the NFL changes, Anthony's very much on board with this concept, is that the offense is really setting the tone for most teams, really good teams in the NFL. So it's very strange to see the Giants go the opposite direction, really utilize their defense predominantly as the tone setter. So maybe that's what they're looking at for the first round of the draft. If a guy like Jamar Chase falls, you have no choice but to take him. He is the best player available. Devonta Smith, best player available. Even Jalen Waddle, maybe the best player available. But there are some really talented guys. Even Caleb Farley, Patrick Surtain, really, really great guys. You add a corner like Caleb Farley or Patrick Surtain, and you have one of the best secondaries in the NFL, because you have Xavier McKinney you got last year. You got Logan Ryan back, Jabril Peppers, Julian Love as a depth piece. That's a freaking amazing secondary. And then your defensive line, you just hope for the best. You re-sign your guys. You get creative with your pass rush. We really didn't see Xavier McKinney explode onto the scene until week 17. He had a tackle for a loss. He had a sack. He had an interception. 8 combined tackles. We're going to see a lot more from him. Jabril Peppers had that breakout season last year. If he can stay healthy, he's another guy that's going to dominate. So, this all leads back to Kwity Paye, though, in the sense that, we really need someone multiple, someone that's going to fit the scheme, and someone that if injuries arise, you can put him into different roles. That's why I'm leaning towards Micah Parsons. Aside from the red flags, like, let's just say the red flags don't exist, I would go Micah Parsons, because if you have a problem at outside linebacker, you can put him there. He can actually dominate as a pass rusher. He went into college as a pass rusher. He's projected as a stacked outside linebacker to start his career. He's a guy that you could supplement multiple spots, whether it's weak side, strong side linebacker, or you can use him off the edge. So, that's a phenomenal prospect, potentially generational. Minus the coverage abilities. People aren't really that high in his coverage aspects. But that's something that you can refine. He has the athletic traits and the mentality to be a good cover linebacker as well. But for the most part, I'm not really on the Kwity Paye train. A lot of people bring his name up. I think my final determination is that I'd rather go in a different direction.
Yeah, that's fair. We're very much in agreement on this, right? We don't see Kwity Paye being a major scheme fit for the Giants. Very talented player, will succeed elsewhere. Just probably not a good fit for the Giants. I think that they could do better at number 11 overall, especially. In a trade down, I would definitely be enticed to get Kwity Paye. Like I said, there's a lot that you can mold into a really good player there. There's a lot of intangibles, like unteachable traits that he has that you can really mold into a very solid edge rusher. I just don't know if I want to draft a project edge rusher at number 11 overall if I'm the Giants, personally. And then one more thing that you said that I thought was really interesting. You said you're fully in the wide receiver boat. I don't know if I would necessarily say that I'm fully in the wide receiver boat, because I think that I'm more fully in the best player available boat. There's a lot of really talented players at the top of this class. And I'm starting to really fall in love with prospects like Caleb Farley. Defenders too. I'm still in love with Jamar Chase. I still really like Devonta Smith. I like Jalen Waddle even more, which might surprise some people. But yeah, it's Chase, Waddle, and then Devontae Smith for me. So, and then, guys like Kyle Pitts, like, there's so many options for the Giants at 11. I don't want to reach on an edge rusher just because the Giants have a need at edge rusher. I want to take the best player available. Because you look at the Giants roster, there's a lot of needs on there, okay? I know that the edge rusher is like the biggest need, and wide receiver is the other biggest need, but cornerback too is a big need. Interior offensive line is a big need. Right tackle is a big need. Like, there's a lot of needs, and I just want to get the best player available. And another one, an offensive playmaker is a big need, whether you're saying tight end, wide receiver. So that's where Kyle Pitts comes into play. So number 11 overall, I think, if I had it my way, I'd be looking to trade down personally because there's a lot of mid-round prospects that I'm starting to fall in love with in this year's draft. Alex, you know exactly who I'm talking about. Alan McNeil. Everybody keep an eye on him. A lot of mid-round prospects that I take a look at and I think are really, really special. And I would love to take a chance on those guys. So I would actually love to trade down, get an extra third and sixth or fifth round pick, something like that. But personally, at number 11 overall, if the Giants stick and pick, I want to go best player available, whether that be a defender, whether that be a wide receiver. Yeah, wide receiver is the top priority, but let's see what happens in free agency. We just talked about this in the last episode. Maybe the Giants make a good run at Kenny Golladay and they sign him. Then are we all going to be clamoring to get Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, or Jamar Chase? No, probably not. We're going to be turning our attention to a guy like Caleb Farley. And I know there's some very ugly accusations about Micah Parsons right now, and I don't really want to speak on them because I haven't fully read up on them and I don't know that much about them, so I'm not going to make any judgment calls and say anything. But I will say he is a talented prospect, and he's likely to go in the top 15 picks of this draft, so he's another guy that will actually probably be on the board for the Giants to consider, depending on how those accusations play out and how whatever legal process that might come along with it plays out. So another guy, right? So defender, wide receiver, it's all in play for me. That's how I see it as a Giants fan. Best player available if they stick and pick, but like I said, we'll probably do another scenario video soon. I really like the trade down scenarios that keep popping up in my head. You mentioned one earlier in this video too. So that's definitely something to consider. But yeah, your wide receiver, I'm best player available.
Yeah, I mean, also, I'm thinking about Waddle right now, and ever since, we did the film breakdown on him, he just really keeps festering in my mind. And the reason is, if you don't have a great offensive line, having guys that you can target in the short to intermediate passing game is essential. And he's a guy that can create separation. He's a guy you can scheme open and pre-snap motion. So many things you can do to design your offense around a guy like Jalen Waddle. And it really can mask some of your deficiencies on the offensive line. The Giants aren't going to have the cap space or really the draft capital unless they go Rashawn Slater or somebody to fill that right tackle spot. They're going to have to settle for another rotation with Cam Fleming and Matt Peart, or if Cam Fleming leaves, Matt Peart alone or somebody else. They're going to have to figure out what to do there. And with that being said, you really want to go out and find a really great playmaker who's going to get open very early. If you have Kenny Golladay and you have and that's another thing. Teams last year blitzed the Giants so much. They'd cover one and cover zero over and over and over again. They would send multiple blitzers, and that's just how they beat them. If you have Kenny Golladay and Jalen Waddle and Saquon Barkley, you can't play cover zero. You can't play cover one all the time. You got to be playing cover two. You got to be playing zone. Tampa, you can't rush multiple guys. You can't create those double team mismatches all the time. You can't get free blitzers. It's just not going to happen. So it allows your offensive linemen to really have those 1v1 matchups. They just have to win those. When it comes to the stunts and everything else, that's another story. But that's another reason why losing Kevin Zeitler is not on my agenda. You cannot lose Kevin Zeitler because, especially with our problems at right tackle, you lose Kevin Zeitler, that right side of the line is a absolute liability. So there's a lot the Giants have to figure out this year, and there's some moves that can devastate that offensive line, like losing Kevin Zeitler. I think they should extend him another year or two and then just spread out the cap hit, move it down the line so they can sign a wide receiver this year. But that's kind of how I feel about this. Kwity Paye, off the board in my opinion. I'm not a big fan unless they're going to trade back and then develop him, but I don't think the Giants can afford to develop a guy over the next 2 years because DJ's going into his third season. They don't have the time. They just don't have the time. And if Dave Gettleman makes a move like that, and, Daniel Jones, they're not in the playoffs by the time Daniel Jones' rookie deal's up. Not only is Dave Gettleman gone, but Daniel Jones is gone too. So, this is we need to win now next season. We need someone that's going to impact this team. And Jalen Waddle, or wide receiver, or Kyle Pitts, Micah Parsons is someone that I think will impact this team immediately.
Yeah, it's a good point because myself specifically, I'm always looking long term. I always like to look at the long term thing. So I usually like these project guys. But when you're picking 11 overall, not as much, right? Like, at some point, you have to get that instant impact player. I feel like the Giants got that at number 17 in 2019 with Dexter Lawrence. They got a project at number 4 with Andrew Thomas. They got a project at number 6 with Daniel Jones. There's been a lot of projects, and we're still in this rebuild, and we're going with the long-term mentality, right? But when the team was making this playoff push at the end of last season, we all probably wish that we just had that one instant impact player that we got this offseason, but didn't, right? Don't we all just wish that we had that one extra player, that X-factor player that could have just pushed us over the edge and gotten us
Beckham
into the
Jr. is what they
playoffs?
all say.
Right. A lot of people will point to the wide receiver position.
It was supposed to be Saquon. Let's be real. It was supposed to be Saquon.
It is supposed to be Saquon. It is. But injuries are part of the game. So you need as many playmakers as possible, because if one goes down, next man up, right? Giants need more playmakers. They need more instant impact players, which is why just personally at number 11 overall, when the Giants they literally vowed to find playmakers this offseason, when they made that vow, that's in my head, they're going to have to get an impact player at number 11 and not draft a project.
I'm not going to forget that John Mara said that, and then Dave Gettleman
He made a promise. They both made a promise. They made a promise. If they do not deliver on that promise, let's storm the castle. Let's all go to MetLife with pitchforks and torches, okay? That's what we should do if they don't get us our offensive playmaker.
We can't mess that stadium more than it already looks. This is an absolute shithole.
Dude, oh man, you're so harsh, man. MetLife isn't that bad.
It's so bad.
It could have been better, but it's not.
It's a multi-purpose stadium that was not built like for just football. It's like it's super windy. It's super spread out. It doesn't feel like you're all together. I don't personally. I don't like it. You guys, let me know in the comments what you think. If you like MetLife Stadium, I personally hate it. If you've been to any other actual football stadiums, that's not it. Like that. I've watched soccer games at MetLife. I've watched concerts at MetLife, and they do that at other stadiums too. But it wasn't built specifically for football. It's built multi-purposed. So it's really spread out. Like if you're in the upper deck, you're really far from the field. Other stadiums, like if you go to AT&T Stadium, you're like looking down into the field. Like that was built for football. So compared to some of those stadiums, like MetLife's probably on the bottom of my list. I don't like the layout at all.
Well, I'll say
also,
I've been to two other stadiums. I've been to Miami Dolphins, Hard Rock Stadium, and I've been to Raymond James, Tampa Bay, where the Super Bowl is being played this year. And I do see what you're saying, where the Giants were way more multi-purpose when they built that. It's very much, you get further and further from the stadium as you're in there. But when you go to Raymond James Stadium, there's literally a pirate ship just sitting in the stadium. That stadium was built for football. You know what I mean? And you go to Hard Rock, that stadium was also built for football. While they do other things there, it is very multi-purpose. But yeah, I agree. But this is so off topic. Fun little tangent.
Kwity Paye to MetLife Stadium.
I would love to hear some more opinions down below, though, in the comment section or on Twitter if you're listening on the podcast. Let us know what you think of the stadium. Have you been to any others? Which ones do you like the best? And then, of course, let us know what you think of Kwity Paye. Let us know what you think of the Giants potentially drafting Kwity Paye at number 11 overall. Do you think he's a scheme fit? Do you think he's a project? Or do you think he's instant impact? What do you think of him for the Giants? I think we made our position pretty clear. We're not a fan of him at number 11, maybe in a trade down, but at number 11, not so sure about that. I think he's too much of a project and not the biggest scheme fit. So, Alex, I'll let you get any final remarks in there about Kwity Paye or about MetLife Stadium, whatever you want. And, everybody knows where I stand on this one.
Well, screw MetLife, Kwity Paye, not my favorite. I'm going for a playmaker. If it's up to me, like Jalen Waddle, someone that can help DJ in the short to intermediate routes. That's the guy I'm looking for, That's somebody that I think you need an explosive playmaker who's going to catch the ball effectively in those ranges and then make plays after the catch. That's a big one. Golden Tate was supposed to be that guy, but he just, he's older. It just didn't work out the way we wanted it to. And a guy like Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, they can blow defenses up like that. That's someone you need that commands attention. And I do love how they play. They can play inside and out. All three of those main guys, by the way, and Kyle Pitts too, can play slot and outside receiver. So that really gives the diversity that we like. That's kind of what I'm looking toward. We'll do some more breakdowns tomorrow with Chris. We're going to be breaking down Micah Parsons. So that's going to be really fun. I'm really excited about that. Aside from the red flag issues, we'll let him talk about those. But for the most part, he is a really just unbelievable athlete. Just the guy blows your mind on tape. He's just insane. And I'm really excited for you guys to see that. So as always, guys, thank you so much for the support. Thank you guys so much for bearing with us through the cat poo and the nukage of yesterday's video. So much love to everybody, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.